Welcome to the NBA Coast to Coast podcast brought to you by thelines.com. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined by Nate Weitzer. He's on the East Coast. And we've got MLK Day NBA hoop action here. 6 games on Monday. We're looking at this stuff on Sunday night to go ahead and get ahead of it, especially because out here on the West Coast, we've got games starting at 9 a.m. and rolling throughout the day. So definitely want to make sure that you're staying tuned to those injury reports as new news is going to drop throughout the day. But we're working with what we've got here for you, get you some early looks and find some of that value on some of these plays. So let's go ahead and get into your first best bet here, a game near and dear to my heart, Nate, with the Knicks and the Hawks.
Yeah, but I think you're going to agree with me on fading your Knickerbockers right now. I mean, with Cat and Josh Hart both questionable, they need both those guys in there and playing well to really beat anybody right now. And I don't know if they're already wearing down, if the Knicks' lack of depth is showing already, but like they have not been good for about 9 straight games here. They have the one outburst against the Milwaukee Bucks, and then otherwise 2-6 against the spread. Their only other wins against Toronto and Philly's backups in overtime. They have a loss to Orlando's backups. Of course, they got dog walked twice by OKC, crushed in their last game by the Wolves without Cat, and did lose at home to the Pistons, and enter a Hawks team that maybe a slight edge above the Pistons in terms of just overall, competitive level, but like they've totally stepped up and beaten the Cavs twice. They're coming off beating the Celtics, winning 3 straight. Okongwu is absolutely crushing it. So it's just like Capella's your placeholder starting center, and then we bring in the guy who's actually effective, and you got Jalen Johnson back. And I mean, what Atlanta does well, I don't know if the Knicks are really well positioned to take advantage of, which is why they've already lost twice to the Hawks this year, right? I mean, Knicks in this struggle fest the last 9. I mean, we know they're not good defensively. They're 28th in defensive rating, so that's not a huge surprise. But the offense not good enough, and -3 net, and the second lowest assist rate. And so against a Hawks team that when you can beat them with spot up threes and find dimes to get those, you're going to have success. That's why they haven't had success against them. And you have Dyson Daniels now to put on Brunson, who now is only averaging 17 a game in 4 career meetings against Dyson. And the Hawks have been in these games or beaten the Knicks. It's Trey at the Garden, right? I mean, 4 of the last 5 with Trey at the Garden, the Hawks have won, and he hasn't even shot well. And now he comes in really hot, averaging 28.5 and 11 in January, very efficient. Atlanta is not a team you really want to back as a favorite too often, right? 25% ATS, but they are almost 60% as dogs. So I will take the points here and maybe a little sprinkle on the money line if you think Cat or Hero Hart don't go.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and if Cat does go, like, where's he at with a bum hand? Like, what's he going to do? The biggest part of his offensive sort of weaponry is the ability to stretch you out at 7'1" and still also drive to the rim with decent handles. If you don't have the threat of that shot, now we're talking about what, post moves? That's not how this Knicks team runs on post moves. Like, you have to have the space for the shooters and the room in the middle of the court for Jalen Brunson to work. And if you don't have that, then this whole thing doesn't work. And so having Cat at less than 80% is a problem for this Knicks team, who is scarce to find quality bigs down low. No offense to you, Achua. I'm not even going to mention Jericho Sims. So yeah, there's going to be advantages for this Hawks team all over the floor. And goddamn, Trey is good, man. Like, on offense, he's so skilled, and it's so like, you put Cat in that pick and roll. Honestly, you put Precious in that pick and roll. There ain't many people that can really handle that. And yeah, I was going to go with this game as well, by the way, Hawks to cover in this one. I'm kind of just auto Hawksing these games when they've got Trae Young going against the Garden with the villain that he is. But let me go to your squad here. Talk about Boston with a team near and dear to my heart as well, with the Dubs. Not a good team, though. I'm taking the Celtics here, -6.5. Steph is questionable. He did get pretty dinged up in that Wizards game, unfortunately, after getting 26 points, had to exit, and we'll see what's up with his ankles. Dre is out already. Draymond, B-Pods is out. It might be a good thing for them for this year. So is Kuminga. So that's what they're working with right now. It's going to be probably heavy Andrew Wiggins game once again, coming off his 31 and 11 performance. That ain't it, man. Not against Boston. And look, the doldrums of January for Boston are one thing, but I mean, you put them in the building against the Warriors and Steph Curry in the finals rematch. Like, what do we, it's going to be all like they're going to go for it. There's no question in my mind that the Celtics are going to come ready to play. If even despite their struggles in the last 10 games, they're 6-4, they're 2-3 in their last five. They're still sixth in defensive rating. It's really just been a lot of like, I don't know, weirdness from guys like Derek White, Drew Holiday, even Jaylen Brown has sort of taken a step back in terms of his shooting. And that's in part because Kristaps is out there. But this all just comes out to like, this is one that it's in the middle of the sort of doldrums that I'm talking about that I think is going to stand out to them. And the biggest thing here for the Dubs is like whatever they had going at the beginning of the season and their above the break defense and their tenacity, which you thought would only get better with Dennis Schroeder in town. That's part of the reason they brought him there, was another head of the defense, attacker / guy that can play make on the other side of the ball. Well, that ain't really working out here. We've got the Dubs' second worst opponent above the break 3-point field goal percentage over the course of their last 10. Now, Schroeder's played about, I believe, 18 games with them. I'm just pulling that back up here. 16 games with them. So basically, since he got there, they're just that it's been the inverse of what they were. And in part because Gary Payton Jr. Is out. But like that was the point of Schroeder, was to have another guy up top that could actually play defense up there. And it just hasn't happened. They're allowing the sixth most made threes overall in their last 10 games. That's just where you go, right? When you're looking at the Celtics, that's going to be a huge problem. And if you look at the other side of the ball, it's kind of the inverse of everything I just said. So the Dubs struggling mightily to shoot from deep, and the Celtics still guarding that above the break three stuff very, very well and limiting those points. So that's really what it's going to come down to. No Steph to shoot them out of this. Even if Steph was out there, I don't think he's able to shoot them out of this, whether the Celtics play their bigs or not tomorrow. I think they're going to win this game by close to double digits, if not more than that.
Yeah, I know. I like that you're getting the Celtics after a loss here. That is always a key, where you don't get the Celtics in a sleepy spot. You get them looking to roar back, and you'd think that the Warriors, like it feels like a trap a little bit because the Warriors just always have seemed to have their number. But I mean, the Celtics are going to look to respond to that. And if Steph is even thinking about sitting this one out because Draymond, continues to be unable to suit up and there's just nothing around him. And I think you can take the Celtics here for sure. It's probably going to be 7.5 by the time this airs, but
yeah,
still good because when it rains, it pours threes. And I think aren't the Dubs close to even money to miss the playoffs at this point? Like that might be a futures look that they're just kind of pulling the plug on this thing.
Yeah. I don't know that there's any amount of trades that's going to bring them into contention. So
yeah. All right, Detroit at Houston. I'll go over 224 here. The Rockets are an over team, and I think if Amen Thompson's playing, I think you can just look at their team total at 115 and think maybe Detroit does not come along. Maybe they actually get worked here because Amen could do a very good job on Cade, which we saw the Pacers do just 2 games ago for the Pistons. But the Pistons have been an over team as well, especially against the West. They've gone over in 9 of their last 10. Against the West, with your Dubs being the only exception because they can't score. And they're 11-4 to the over as road dogs, which they are in this spot. But more for me about just the Rockets with playing with so much more pace in the half court. I mean, they're slightly above average in terms of pace in the last 7 here when Amen basically became the identity of their team. And they're 6-1 to the over, and even the under here went over this total, 224. They even went over right against Portland because they dragged it over the team total with Amen sitting. And I do think Amen comes back here. I think it was calf soreness, right? So it's not like a notable injury necessarily. He might have just been out for maintenance against a team that's tanking, and now he wants to play against his twin brother. So I do like some of his props, and I like the Rockets to continue what they've done with him, injecting a lot of life into both sides of the ball, which is number 1 offensive rating, number 1% of points off turnovers, and getting out in transition. These teams are both top 5 in transition frequency in the last 7, neither really depending on the 3 ball or on assisted field goals necessarily to get their buckets. I mean, the Rockets in particular, it's just like it's just Jalen Green doing his thing. Amen being an athlete. It's really simplified, watered down. Şengün, 8 in this last matchup, even though there wasn't a lot of points in general. Like he had 27. He had no problem ripping through the Detroit front line, which has been a little leakier lately. Their rebounding rate has gone down. Their points in the paint allowed has gone up as they've played some better offenses lately. So I think we get a nice back and forth affair here in the afternoon in Houston.
Yeah, should be. We'll see if Detroit comes along for the ride. I noticed you also kind of just briefly mentioned the team total for the Rockettes. Definitely want Amon to be playing and to be playing the like 36 to 38, sometimes 40 minutes that he gets. That's a huge part of this. And then Jabari Smith's out, but other than that, we're gonna have Tari Eason in there, who's also a speeded up guy. So love having Tari. Tari, Amon, when those guys are out there. If we don't have Amon, but we have Tari Eason out there, I'm happy with it. They don't like the half court offense. You were mentioning the lack of assists. It's still just going to be your turn, my turn with Fred, and Jalen Green. But yeah, getting those big guys in there, like, or I should say, like versatile guys like Amon in at the 4 for this team has sped them up to an over. And like we say, they're better in transition. So having to avoid that half court is helpful for their offense. But Minnesota, Memphis. I was going back and forth between an over and just taking Memphis because Ja is currently questionable. And if Ja wasn't questionable, I'd be taking this at 3.5. But if Ja wasn't questionable, this wouldn't be 3.5 for Memphis. So that's the catch-22. But that's why I'm happy to take it at 3.5 now, because I still think this is a fine play if Ja doesn't suit up. To be honest, like this Memphis team we know it's depth for sure, but to be honest, like Scottie Pippen Jr. isn't even really the true backup point guard at this point. It's really Desmond Bane to a degree. We saw him with like 11 or 12 assists in their last game. Really loved that play for him when Ja's out. So yeah, I still think that they're going to be fine with or without Ja, because the other thing is sneaky good rookie of the year look here would be Jalen Wells, by the way, who's leading the league rookies in points and field goals made and all this stuff, because he's been consistently getting 25 to 32 minutes for this team since the jump, even with guys fully healthy for the Grizz at this point. He's pretty much solidified in that lineup. So I do love the sort of emergence of him as another shooter alongside guys like Bane. That keeps things good. Look at Minnesota in the last 10. They're going to be playing without Dante DiVincenzo, and he was inserted into that starting lineup in part because they do need better defense above the break, and that it does solidify their ability to sort of guard shooters and limit the catch and shoot to the other team. He's not going to be playing in this game, so we're going back to Mike Conley. And if you look at this team in the last 5, they're 5th in offensive rating, but they're 22nd in defensive rating. They are playing at the 28th pace, and I just couldn't get there with the pace that they played to take an over, even though I know Memphis is going to speed this thing up. Like, even if Minnesota's offense has been much better and their defense much worse, I can't take an over 233 for them at this point when their games are averaging like 223 on the road. It just doesn't work for me at this point. And a lot of their overs as of late in the offense that we've seen has been against the 3rd easiest strength of schedule in the league over the last 10. So I'm not really buying the victories and the points that they put up against poo-poo competition. And like I was saying, even with Dante out there, that above the break defense is a big problem right now, which is a big problem against Memphis. They're 22nd in limiting above the break makes right now. If you look at Memphis over the course of their last 10, they're back up in the top 6 in terms of the frequency with which they're taking shots above the break. They're 2nd in pace, which they've been all season. They've got the most transition possessions in the league. And while Minnesota has been pretty good at limiting the transition bucket, they have been worse in the last 10, dropping down to 18th, limiting transition points in that time frame. So, they're still a good defense. They haven't been over the last 10 against bad teams. We'll see if they try to step it up and lock it up. But things have been struggling for them down low. And I think there's going to be some points for Jaren Jackson Jr. and anybody that's looking to drive into the lane, probably going to have some success for Memphis.
Yeah, Memphis at home can't really go wrong there right now. I mean, whether they're full strength or not, whether it's Ja or not, I think it's a good pivot. I mean, this total keeps going up, and I cannot get a Memphis under because it just doesn't happen. They just push the pace to an insane degree. I can't believe that second meeting with the Spurs didn't go under, even though I didn't pick it this time. And even without Ja, it still did not. They just rack up the points. But one more lean for us, which as we're seeing the results right now, the Clippers are waxing the Lakers, and the Bulls are in a close one with Portland. Makes me think even more Clippers -6 tomorrow night with both of those teams on a back-to-back. I think the Bulls might be pulling the plug in terms of like if they have a top 6 protected pick, and if they just lose all their games the rest of the way, maybe they can keep their pick. But this team is starting to spiral downward, and LAC has done a really good job on them in general, because I mean all they do is run and gun and shoot threes, and so the LAC has won 3 straight by double digits against the Bulls, even though the Bulls have shot actually pretty well in the last couple. So that's definitely a look to get here at the end of the slate on Monday.
I like it. Yeah, I like the look there for sure. Yeah, I just want to see who's playing for the Clips, obviously. But to your point, like the Bulls are auditioning players right now for trades. Like they're auditioning the Ios and the Giddies and especially Giddy and the Lonzos and other guys like that to say like we're gonna have somewhat of a fire sale. I mean, Zach LaVine shouldn't be there by February, so we'll see what happens with the Bulls. To your point, but they need to get rid of some guys to tank better, including Vooch. So we'll see what happens with them. But that's all the time we have for you in best bets with these sides and totals. Also have an episode up with the player props as we do each and every weekday. So make sure to subscribe to that page and don't miss any of the action moving forward. And until we see you next, happy betting.